Have you ever wondered how top-tier organizations don't just survive but actively maintain world-class quality in a business environment that's basically always shifting? I mean, we live in what experts call a VUCA world. That stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Everything's interconnected, tech is moving at warp speed, and change is literally the only constant. So how on earth do you keep the engine of your business running smoothly without sacrificing quality? Well, that's exactly what we're tackling in today's explainer. We're diving deep into operation as per ISO 9001, the engine of success. Specifically, we're zeroing in on Clause 8 of the ISO 9001 standard. Think of your quality management system as a car. If that's the case, Clause 8 is absolutely the engine. It's where the fuel actually burns, where the real work gets done, and where you actually create value for your customers. Here's a quick look at our roadmap. We're going to start with the engine of success, then move through planning and requirements, design and external providers, production and service, release and non-conforming outputs, and finally, we'll wrap up with innovating your operations.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the engine of success.
So, before we can even think about building a product or delivering a service, we've got to understand where operations actually fit into the bigger picture. The whole ISO 9001 framework operates on the famous plan, do, check, act, right? You plan your goals, you do the work, you check the results, and you act to improve. Today, our total focus is on step 2, the do phase. This is where the rubber meets the road, and you implement everything you've been planning.
When you crack open the actual ISO 9001-2015 standard, Clause 8 is just titled Operation. And it's really no surprise that this is the longest, most detailed section of the entire standard. Why? Because it covers the literal end-to-end execution of your business. It is the absolute beating heart of your quality management system. It's where you actually produce the thing the customer is paying for.
Moving right along to Section 2, planning and customer requirements. Okay, so for the very first step of actual operations, you can't just blindly start building stuff. You have to lay down the groundwork and, most importantly, you have to listen to the customer. To kick things off, the standard demands some seriously strict control from day one. You've got to establish the criteria for your processes and figure out what makes the product acceptable. But even before you commit to supplying anything, you have to nail down exactly what the customer actually wants. That includes all those statutory and regulatory requirements, and it means keeping the lines of communication wide open. Now, I really want you to focus on this specific requirement. The standard literally mandates that you must resolve contract or order requirements differing from those previously defined. Guys, this is a massive failsafe. Think about it. If a customer thinks they're ordering a bicycle, but your sales team thinks they just sold a motorcycle, operations absolutely cannot begin until you fix that discrepancy. Let's look at Section 3, Design and External Providers. Once you actually know what the customer wants, you need a blueprint. And let's be real, you usually need outside help to bring it to life. Clauses 8.3 and 8.4 are entirely about control. Design and development isn't just sitting around in a brainstorming session. It's a rigorously controlled process with strict planned stages, verified inputs, and validated outputs. Plus, almost no organization out there operates in a vacuum anymore. You have to clearly define exactly how much control you're going to apply to your external providers, meaning your suppliers and any outsourced processes, because at the end of the day, their failures become your failures.
Ultimately, all of this careful design and strategic sourcing leads us to product realization. This is defined as the achievement of a product with the quality attributes appropriate to meet the needs of customers. In plain English, it's taking that perfectly planned design on paper and turning it into a real, tangible reality.
All right, Section 4, Production and Service Provision. The blueprint is finalized, the materials have arrived, it is time to fire up the engine. Clause 8.5 lays down the law that production has to happen under, quote, controlled conditions. What does that mean? It means having the right information, the right measuring tools, and the right infrastructure in place. It also heavily emphasizes identification and traceability. If a part randomly fails, can you trace it all the way back to its original batch? You also have to preserve the product during production so it doesn't degrade or get damaged before it even reaches the customer's hands. A really vital piece of maintaining those controlled conditions is preventing human error. The standard specifically requires organizations to relentlessly mitigate risks. So whether you're using automation, strict checklists, or some clever foolproof design, preventing a mistake from happening in the first place is always, always better than trying to catch one later. Which brings us to Section 5, Release and Non-conforming Outputs. But look, what happens when a mistake actually does slip through? Because it happens to the best of us. Before you hand a single thing over to the customer, Clause 8.6 requires strict verification that all acceptance criteria have actually been met. You simply can't release the product until every planned arrangement is satisfactorily checked off. And, crucially, you have to retain documented information that traces exactly who authorized that final release. If it doesn't pass those checks, it becomes what we call a nonconforming output. Clause 8.7 demands that these outputs are immediately identified and controlled. You have to prevent their unintended use or delivery. Look, in the world of quality management, finding a defect internally isn't necessarily a failure of your system, but letting that defect reach the customer, that absolutely is. You've got to take appropriate corrective action based on whatever went wrong. Finally, Section 6, innovating your operations. For the last piece of this puzzle, let's talk about adapting for the future. ISO 9001 gives us these incredibly rigorous rules, but for your business to survive, your operations have to be fluid. Take a look at this insight from Thomas Woodsmeyer from a recent BSI Technical Committee webinar. He pointed out that in our crazy, complex VUCA world, just trying to maintain the status quo isn't just inefficient anymore, it's an actual risk. To achieve sustainable success, organizations absolutely have to adapt their business models and actively use emerging technology. It's really interesting because there's a stark contrast between continuous improvement and innovation. In quality management, we're super comfortable with continuous improvement, right? Those safe, incremental changes in a highly controlled, low-risk environment. But as innovation expert Leo Colombo points out, true innovation involves high uncertainty and a really high risk of failure. In quality, a failure means a non-conformance report. But in innovation, failure is just a vital step in learning. Think of Thomas Edison testing thousands of different light bulb filaments. To truly thrive, your operations have to figure out how to balance both mindsets. Just look at how emerging tech is completely transforming operational design and customer requirements today. You've got Hitachi using AI and deep learning to optimize huge business objectives. Companies like IKEA and L'Oreal are heavily using augmented reality, so you can literally see a couch in your living room or try on lipstick virtually through an app, which is completely redefining how we look at customer requirements in Clause 8.2. And we're even seeing medical drones innovating logistics and delivery operations to quite literally save lives. Because technology is just advancing at this breakneck pace, the experts all agree on one major thing. You cannot do this alone. Collaboration is absolutely the key to surviving the fourth industrial revolution. Organizations have to partner up with academia, standardization bodies, and diverse supply chains. You just can't manage all these rapidly changing technologies purely in-house anymore. You have to collaborate if you want to successfully innovate your operations. Which brings us to our final thought. We've seen how Clause 8 of ISO 9001 provides this incredibly powerful, tightly controlled engine for your operations. Everything from planning and design all the way to production and release. But remember, an engine is really only as good as its ability to handle the road ahead. So I'll leave you with this. Are your operations built merely to survive the present, or are they being innovated to thrive in the future? Take these principles back to your team, embrace the structure, but seriously, don't be afraid to innovate. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.